something very strange is happening, and almost no one is noticing. The most conscious people, those who saw life differently, are simply disappearing. It's not that they've died or given up. It's something more subtle and frightening. They're withdrawing, falling silent, vanishing from the chaos the world has become. Have you ever felt that truly awakened people are becoming increasingly rare? That the world is becoming emptier, colder, more automatic? Well, that's exactly what this video will show you. The real reason behind this silent disappearance that almost no one has the courage to explain. What's happening to the souls who soar beyond the superficial? Why are those who once sought truth now hiding in silence? There's something much bigger going on behind the scenes of human consciousness, and understanding it can completely change the way you view your own life. In this video, you'll discover what's behind the disappearance of the most lucid minds and the most sensitive hearts, and why this distancing isn't a coincidence. It's part of a profound movement that Alan Watts warned about decades ago. If you feel like the world is strange, that people are sleeping while you're trying to stay awake, watch until the end. What you'll understand here may explain why you feel different, out of place, and perhaps even show you that this disappearance isn't the end. It's the beginning of something much bigger. Now you understand what many haven't yet. Awakened souls aren't disappearing, they're preparing for something greater, and that changes everything. When you grasp this truth, solitude makes sense, silence gains purpose, and the world's confusion ceases to shake you. This content has opened your eyes, and you are now part of a small group of people who see beyond. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. That's how you help this message reach those who are still lost. Every new subscriber and every like keeps this chain of awakening that has begun within you alive. Have you noticed how the most conscious people are becoming increasingly silent? Before, they were the ones who talked about energy, consciousness, and seeing the world through different eyes. Today, many of them have disappeared from conversations, networks, and groups. They haven't really disappeared, they've just drifted away. They're tired of trying to explain their feelings to people who sleep with their eyes open. It's as if they've realized the world's noise has become too loud. For those who have learned to hear what comes from within, and it's curious because the more they understand life, the more silent they become. This is no coincidence. Awakened souls are withdrawing because they've realized that the more they try to wake others by force, the more resistance they encounter. They've understood what Alan Watts always taught, that no one can be forced to awaken. Each person has their own rhythm, and trying to accelerate it only creates conflict. So they've chosen silence, a silence that isn't surrender but protection. It's the kind of silence that comes when you understand that not everyone wants to listen, and that's okay. You begin to guard your words, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. These people are tired of talking to people who only want to respond, not understand. Tired of trying to be heard in a world that talks non-stop. And when they realize the noise is louder than the truth, they stop fighting and start observing. They begin to see how much the world feeds on distraction, how much people confuse being busy with being alive. And at that point, a choice arises. Continue in the midst of the confusion, trying to be understood, or distance themselves and preserve their energy. Most choose silence, but this silence is powerful. It's where the mind reorganizes, the heart aligns, and the soul understands the next step. It's where clarity is born, the kind that the noise of society tries to hide. Watts said that true understanding comes when we stop searching and simply observe, and that's what awakened souls are doing. Watching the world collapse into noise while learning to remain at peace. They're not escaping reality, they're simply choosing not to get lost in it. Their disappearance is a form of resistance. While everyone competes for attention, they disappear on purpose. While the world screams, "Look at me," they whisper, "Look inside." And that's where their power lies. Because when the whole world talks, those who listen become rare. And when silence becomes your home, you begin to see what others can't. You realize that behind the news, the arguments, the fears, and the trends, there's a void disguised as importance. And realizing this is liberating. Many call this withdrawal weakness, escape, isolation. But it's the opposite. It's a sign of spiritual maturity. The awakened person doesn't need to prove anything. They don't need to win debates or convince anyone. They simply live according to what they know to be true. And deep down, they understand that everyone will awaken in their own time. It's like forcing a flower to bloom. You only hurt it. Awakened souls understand that the world is not yet ready to hear certain truths, so they choose to preserve what they have built within. And while the world churns, these souls remain steadfast, silent, yet aware. They watch people lose themselves in opinions, arguments, and fears, and simply breathe deeply, as if they've seen this cycle before. Because they know the noise passes. And when it does, the silence will reveal who truly understood the lesson. It's in this silence that they continue to grow, learn, and grow stronger. And perhaps that's why you feel alone, when in fact you've simply entered that very stage, the stage where the world's noise no longer seduces you. You know what's curious? This silence isn't empty. It's full of awareness. It's in it that answers appear effortlessly. It's in it that you stop chasing and start attracting. It's in it that the ego falls silent and the spirit speaks. And when this happens, the world stops being a place you try to fix and becomes a place you simply observe with understanding. You understand that everything has a cycle and that even chaos is part of the greater harmony. Maybe you felt this urge to disappear for a while, to step away, to be quiet for a while. And do you know what that means? That something inside you is changing, that you're seeing the world through the eyes of someone who no longer wants to live on autopilot. Write your words in the comments. Wake up, so I know you're part of this silent group that's evolving from within. Because this movement isn't small, it's growing, but in a way that no one notices, without noise, without publicity, without the spotlight. And it's precisely at this point that the story begins to get even more interesting, because the silence of these souls isn't the end of the journey. It's the sign of a new phase. A more phase few understand, but one that changes everything. Because after the silence arrives, something much deeper begins to happen. Spiritual awakening is one of the most powerful and, at the same time, most solitary experiences anyone can experience. It doesn't come with applause or flowers. It comes with a reality check. It's as if suddenly the veil falls away and you see the world as it truly is. Everything that once seemed normal becomes uncomfortable. Shallow conversations tire you, noisy places suffocate you, and even the people you loved seem to speak a language you no longer understand. And this is where the paradox begins. Awakening is beautiful, but painful. It's liberating, but also heavy. It's the kind of burden no one tells you you'll carry. Many people think that being an awakened soul means living in peace all the time, full of positive energy. But that's not quite the case. Alan Watts spoke about this very clearly. When you awaken, you realize the absurdity of trying to control everything, and this shatters many illusions that once gave you comfort. You understand that the world is impermanent, that nothing is fixed, and that life is made of cycles, and that's frightening, because deep down, human beings cling to what is stable. And when everything starts to change within you, that fear sets in. Am I going crazy? Is it right to feel this way? But that's exactly where true awakening begins. Being an awakened soul means living feeling more than others. It's seeing beyond appearances. It's perceiving the pain hidden behind a smile, the falsehood disguised as kindness, the ego behind charity. And the more you perceive, the heavier the world seems. It's like being in a theater where everyone still believes the script, and you've already seen the trick behind the curtain. Except, contrary to what many think, this isn't a curse. It's an opportunity, because seeing the truth hurts, but it frees. It hurts, but it makes you more human. Watts said that suffering is not a mistake, it is part of understanding. And that is exactly what the awakened understand. There is no light without shadow. Pain, confusion, loneliness, all of this is part of the process. The problem is that the modern world tries to erase these sensations, sell happiness in capsules, and transform discomfort into illness. Awakened souls, on the other hand, accept discomfort as a teacher. They don't run from it, they learn from it. And that is when awakening ceases to be a burden and becomes a blessing. But until you get to this point, the road is hard, because the awakened person realizes that relationships change. Old friends drift away, not out of malice, but because conversations no longer occur. Previous ambitions lose their meaning, and even the pleasure that came from small victories begins to feel empty. You begin to feel out of place, as if the world spins at a pace that no longer belongs to you. And at that moment, many try to go back to sleep, pretend nothing has changed, force themselves to fit in. But once you awaken, there's no going back. It's like trying to unsee something you've already seen. This phase is the true test, because the universe will want to know, do you truly want to live consciously? Are you prepared to see the truth even when it hurts? Are you willing to continue even when no one understands you? The awakened souls who disappear silently are those who answered yes, but not with words, but with actions. They accepted the burden and transformed it into strength. They stopped complaining and began to understand. They stopped running and began to observe. This is why awakening is a blessing in disguise. It knocks the ground off your feet so you can learn to fly without depending on anything. It destroys certainties but builds freedom. It shows that nothing is permanent, and precisely for this reason, everything is precious. When you understand this, pain ceases to control you, and the peace that emerges is not that of someone who has fled the world, but of someone who has understood it. The curious thing is that this process doesn't happen all at once. It comes in waves. Sometimes you feel enlightened, at peace, connected. The next day, it feels like everything has fallen apart. That's part of it. Alan Watts said that life is like a dance between the self and the universe. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you are led. The secret is to stop resisting and let the rhythm carry you. And when you accept this, the burden transforms into learning, and solitude becomes the place where your soul matures. Perhaps now it makes sense why awakened souls are so silent. They're not sad. They're simply going through the phase where the weight of conscience transforms into wisdom. They've understood that silence is the space where the spirit reorganizes itself, and it's precisely at this point, when silence sets in and the world seems distant, that something even more profound begins to happen, something that completely changes the way these souls see the world around them. Write your word in the comments. Clarity. If you've ever felt this mix of pain and understanding, the next phase of awakening will show you why so many souls chose to disappear from the collective illusion. Have you noticed that the world seems increasingly noisy yet empty? It's as if everyone is rushing, talking, posting, expressing opinions, and at the same time, no one is really saying anything. It's the noise of distraction, the noise of a society that confuses movement with meaning. And that's precisely what awakened souls are escaping, the collective illusion. They're not hiding from the world, they're freeing themselves from it. They're tired of participating in a theater where everyone pretends to be fine even though they live in chaos. They're exhausted of feigning interest in empty conversations, of smiling to disguise spiritual fatigue, of trying to fit into a system that rewards the superficial and despises the profound. What the world calls normal has become exactly what awakened souls try to avoid. Working until exhaustion, shopping to feel alive, competing for attention, faking happiness on social media. All of this has become the norm. And the problem is that those who awaken can no longer participate in this game. Alan Watts said that modern humans are hypnotized by a false idea of progress. They believe that being someone in society is more important than being someone in reality. And when you see this, it's impossible to continue living on autopilot. You begin to see how much the world is programmed to keep you distracted, tired, and disconnected from your essence. Awakened souls see that most live in a race that leads nowhere. It's a race to prove their worth, to appear happy, to avoid feeling behind others. But the more they run, the emptier they become. Therefore, those who awaken withdraw, not because they're antisocial, but because they no longer want to participate in the lie. They prefer silence to superficial conversation. They prefer solitude to the company of those who live in slumber. And this choice, however difficult it may seem, is a sign of lucidity, not of giving up. The withdrawal of awakened souls is a form of self-preservation. They've realized that the modern world is a spectacle designed to drain energy, and that true freedom begins when you turn off the sound. When you stop consuming everything they say is necessary and start listening to your own heart again. Watts said that people are so busy trying to become someone that they forget they're already part of the whole, and that's precisely what awakened souls understand, that there's nothing to achieve, only to be. Escaping the collective illusion is the awakened person's first act of courage. It's the moment they realize that the happiness they sell isn't real, that rushing isn't progress, and that true meaning isn't outside, but within. But this decision comes at a price. When you step out of the flow, you start to be seen as strange. People start saying you've changed, that you're distant, that you've lost interest. But the truth is you're simply tired of living in a world where everyone pretends the essential doesn't exist. And the curious thing is that by moving away, these souls lose nothing. They gain everything. They gain time, clarity, presence. They rediscover the value of being silent, of walking slowly, of breathing without guilt. They discover that peace is not at the top, but at the bottom. It is not in the noise, but in the calm. And it is at this point that their disappearance begins to make sense. They haven't vanished. They've simply shifted frequencies. They've left the mass vibration, the energy of fear, and have begun to live at a level of consciousness where the external no longer rules. This is how many awakened souls begin to live differently, simpler, lighter, more conscious. They begin to value what truly matters: a sincere conversation, a sunset, the silence before bed. And no matter how much the world calls them strange, they know they are finally free, because understanding the game is the first step to escaping it. Alan Watts said that true awakening happens when you understand that you no longer need to fight the current, just stop swimming in the wrong direction. And that's exactly what these souls did. They stopped trying to keep up with a never-ending rhythm and chose the path of consciousness. And when you choose this path, you realize something revealing. The world outside remains the same, but you completely change the way you see it. Now think about it. How many times have you felt like disappearing for a while? To shut everything off, to breathe, to get away from everything that seems too heavy. This is a sign that you too are escaping the collective illusion, even if you haven't realized it yet. Write your words in the comments. Freedom, if that made sense to you. Because this escape isn't weakness. It's the beginning of your strength. And what comes after this detachment is the point where everything changes. It's the moment when detachment stops being fear and becomes power. And that's exactly what the next step of awakening will reveal. There comes a time when the awakened realize that trying to control everything is what causes them the most suffering. It is at this point that true wisdom is born. Detachment. And here we are not just talking about giving up material possessions, but about something much deeper. Releasing control over what cannot be controlled. Awakened souls have understood in practice what Alan Watts explained so clearly. Suffering arises from resistance. The more you try to hold on to what is slipping away, the more pain you create. And the modern world, driven by anxiety and fear of loss, is trapped in precisely this cycle, wanting, grasping, holding on. Awakened souls, on the other hand, are doing the opposite. They are letting go, trusting, allowing life to take its natural course. But detachment doesn't come suddenly. It comes after many falls, much pain and frustration. It comes when you get tired of swimming against the tide, when you finally realize that what's truly yours doesn't need to be forced, and what requires extreme effort to remain no longer belongs to you. Detachment is an act of faith, but not blind faith. It's a clear-headed trust. It's looking at life and saying, I don't need to control everything. I just need to be present. Awakened souls have learned this the hard way. They've lost people, opportunities, and even parts of themselves trying to hold on to the uncontrollable, until one day they understood that true power lies in letting go. And when you begin to let go, something changes within you. Anxiety diminishes, your body relaxes, your mind calms. You understand that life doesn't need to be pushed to function, it flows. Watts said that the universe is like a dance. The problem is that most people try to dance by controlling the music, when the secret is simply to feel the rhythm. The awakened souls who disappear from the world are doing this, dancing to the beat of existence without trying to control each step. They understood that attachment is the greatest enemy of inner peace because it traps you in a state of constant fear, fear of loss, fear of change, fear of being alone. Letting go is the opposite of fear. It's trusting that everything that's true always finds a way to stay and what isn't needs to go. Awakened souls realize that life is a constant flux, and trying to hold on to something is like trying to hold the wind in your hands. So, instead of fighting, they learn to observe. And it's in this act of observation that freedom begins. Because when you stop depending on something to feel complete, you discover that you were already complete all along. The most interesting thing is that detachment completely changes the way you see people. Before, you wanted them to understand you, to approve of you, to stay. Now you realize that everyone is on their own journey, and that trying to hold on to someone is preventing both of you from growing. Awakened souls don't cut ties, they transform them. They love freely. And when they love like this, without pressure or fear, love becomes pure. Watts said that true love is like the wind. You feel it, but you don't hold it back. And that is the essence of detachment. Letting go also means letting old versions of yourself die. And this is perhaps the hardest part, because it's not just about losing the other person, it's about losing the identity you created. Awakened souls are dying and being reborn all the time. They abandon beliefs, roles, and dreams that no longer make sense. And each time they let go, they get closer to their essence. That's why they seem to vanish. They're not disappearing, they're shedding their masks. At first, this process hurts. It's confusing to see everything you thought was important lose its meaning. But then comes a peace that no longer depends on anything. You don't need everything to be right to feel good. You don't need others to understand you to feel complete. You just are. And that's where the awakened soul finds true strength. Not in struggle, but in surrender. Detachment isn't indifference. It's wisdom. It's knowing that the river of life will keep flowing, with or without your effort. And when you understand this, something changes forever. You begin to flow with it, without fear of where it will lead. And it's in this surrender that life begins to surprise you. Everything you release out of love returns transformed. Everything you give with faith returns with purpose. That's why detachment doesn't impoverish you, it frees you. Maybe right now you're feeling like you're losing things, people or situations, but the truth is, what's leaving may just be what no longer serves you. Sometimes the universe takes away what's heavy to show you what's light. And that's why letting go is the heart of awakening, because it makes room for the new. Write your thoughts in the comments. Let go if you felt this inside you right now. Because when we learn to let go, we begin to live in a completely different way. And it's precisely in this state that something even more powerful emerges, the silence that transforms everything around us. There comes a time when the awakened realize there is nothing left to prove. Words lose their power. Arguments seem futile, and the need to explain what they feel simply disappears. This is when silence begins to speak louder. Silence becomes the new language of awakened souls, a language few can understand. But those who understand it are never the same again, because silence is not empty, it is full of presence. It is in it that you begin to hear what truly matters, not the noise of the world, but the voice of conscience. Alan Watts said that truth cannot be spoken, only lived. And that's exactly what silence does. It leads you to live, not just think. When you enter this state, you realize that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the absence of internal noise. It's the space between one thought and another, that interval, where the mind stops and the soul breathes. Awakened souls have discovered that the world talks too much and listens too little, so they decided to do the opposite, to be silent in order to listen. And when they listen, they perceive something that noise has always tried to hide, the wisdom that resides within each of us. In silence, everything becomes clearer. Intentions become clear, lies are revealed, and people's energy shines through. This is why many cannot stand silence, because in it, there is no hiding what one feels. It reveals truths that words try to camouflage. Therefore, awakened souls prefer the calm of being with themselves to the noise of being surrounded by empty voices. And the more they immerse themselves in this silence, the more they realize that it doesn't isolate them. It connects them, because it is in silence that connection with the whole happens. Have you ever noticed how the best answers appear when you stop searching? When you're quiet, at peace, washing dishes, walking slowly, suddenly the answer appears out of nowhere. This is silence at work. It's as if the universe can only deliver what's yours when you're silent enough to listen. Watts said that wisdom arises when we stop resisting the natural flow of life, and it is precisely in silence that this wisdom flourishes. It is there that the awakened learn to distinguish between ego and essence. Silence is also the greatest shield of awakened souls. It protects, purifies, and strengthens. Because when you learn to be still, other people's opinions no longer affect you as much. Criticism loses its power, and comparisons cease to make sense. You understand that peace doesn't come from winning an argument, but from not having to participate in it. It's as if silence places you above the chaos, in a place where nothing else can touch you. And that's precisely why the modern world, with all its haste and distraction, fears silence, because it takes away control of what the system uses most to manipulate: noise. The awakened souls that are disappearing have chosen silence not out of cowardice, but out of wisdom. They know that collective noise is a form of imprisonment. The more people talk, the less they feel. The more they express opinions, the less they reflect. Silence is the opposite of this. It is the awakening of feeling. It is in silence that you begin to notice the little things: the sound of the wind, the beating of your heart, the look of someone who understands you without needing to speak. And it is precisely in these small perceptions that the divine presence dwells. Watts used to say that the universe is like a song, and the silence between the notes is what gives the melody meaning. Awakened souls have understood this. They realize that the world tries to fill every space with noise because it's afraid of what might emerge when everything goes quiet. And what emerges is powerful: self-knowledge. When silence arrives, you begin to see who you truly are, and you realize you've never needed so much to be whole. But silence is also uncomfortable at first. It makes you face what you've always avoided: your fears, your pain, your shortcomings, and that's why so many run from it. But that's precisely where transformation lies. Silence isn't the end. It's the portal. It leads you back within to a space where you don't need approval, where there's no rush, where everything makes sense. It's there that you reconnect with something the noise of the world has made you forget: your own soul. Awakened souls are silent because they have discovered that the most important sound in life is that of awakened consciousness, and it is at this point that they begin to heal. Silence heals because it reorganizes. Energy dissolves heaviness and brings you back to the present. It is in silence that the awakened stop struggling with life and begin to flow with it. And that is why silence is not the absence of movement. It is the most profound movement of all, that of the soul returning to its center. Maybe you've been feeling the urge to be quiet lately, to turn off your phone, to go for a walk without listening to anything, to just breathe. This is your spirit asking for space. Write the word in the comments, silence, so I know you understand this truth, because silence is the language of those who have awakened, and it is in it that they find what the world has lost: the peace that depends on nothing else. And it is precisely from this profound peace that the strength to fulfill the invisible mission these souls carry is born. Many people think awakened souls have disappeared because they've given up on the world, but it's quite the opposite. They've distanced themselves because they've understood that the real work isn't shouting, it's transforming in silence. They're acting in a way the world doesn't yet understand. While most seek visibility, they seek purpose. While everyone else chases recognition, they sow awareness discreetly, almost imperceptibly. That's why they seem to have disappeared, but in fact they're more present than ever. They're working behind the scenes of energy, shifting the collective without needing to be seen. Alan Watts said that when one person awakens, the entire universe awakens with them. And that's exactly what's happening. These silent souls are altering the world's frequency simply by the way they live, think, and relate. They don't impose ideas. They emanate presence. They don't preach change. They become the change. And that's what makes them so powerful. The world tries to measure power by how much someone shows up, but true power lies in those who remain at peace, even when everything outside is falling apart. These souls discovered that awakening isn't about convincing anyone, but about inspiring by example. It's not about forcibly changing others, but about being living proof that it's possible to live in balance, even amidst chaos. And that takes courage, because maintaining serenity when everything around vibrates in disorder is the greatest act of spiritual resistance there is. So they chose to retreat, not as someone fleeing, but as someone preparing. They understood that every profound transformation happens first in the invisible, and only then manifests itself in the world. These souls are like gardeners of consciousness. While the rest of the world is distracted by the noise, they are silently planting seeds of lucidity. Sometimes it's a simple gesture, A loving word, a welcoming look, a silent forgiveness that breaks a cycle of pain. Small acts that go unnoticed, but change everything. Watts said that true wisdom cannot be explained, it must be transmitted. And that's what they're doing. Transmitting energy, even when no one notices. Their mission is to restore balance to the world without fighting it. They're not here to destroy the system, they're here to diffuse the fear within it. Every awakened soul who chooses to live in peace weakens the collective chaos. Every time someone chooses not to react with anger, the world becomes a little lighter. That's why the work of these souls is invisible. It happens within, and the reflection appears without. They don't need applause, because the reward is transformation itself. The most fascinating thing is that this mission has no hierarchy. There are no more awakened or less awakened. Each person contributes in their own way, some with words, others with presence. Some inspire crowds, others simply care for their inner circle, but all are connected by the same purpose, to remind the world of what it has forgotten. And what the world has forgotten is simple, that we are all part of the same whole. Watts said that humanity's mistake is believing it is separate from the universe. Awakened souls have understood that this separation is just an illusion, and they live their lives as if they know everything is interconnected. And that's why they don't compete, don't compare, don't rush. They know that every step, every event is part of a larger plan that doesn't need to be understood, just lived. And when they live this way, they inspire others to do the same, without speech, without effort. It's like a silent flame passing from one candle to another, until one day the darkness has no more room. Maybe you're part of this group and haven't realized it yet. Maybe you're feeling different, out of place, wanting to step away from the noise and seek something more authentic. This isn't isolation, it's a calling. It's the same impulse that drives all awakened souls, the desire to serve their purpose, even without the spotlight, because their mission is like that, invisible to the eye, but immense in its impact. Now you understand what few have the courage to see. Awakened souls haven't disappeared. They've simply chosen to act in a way the world doesn't yet understand. This video showed you something that goes beyond theories. It gave you clarity about your own process, about why you feel what you feel, and about the role you play in this moment in humanity. And when a truth like this arrives, it changes everything. It awakens you, reorganizes you internally, and makes you realize that silence, detachment, and awareness are not signs of weakness but of spiritual strength. If this message touched you in any way, it's because you're part of this silent movement that's transforming the world from within. So, like and subscribe. That's how you keep this energy alive and help others see what you just saw. Each new subscriber, each like is like a light shining amidst the collective noise. And write the word in the comments. Wake up to show that you are ready to continue this journey. Because the next video will delve even deeper into what began here. There's a revelation that explains what comes after this silence, and when you understand it, you'll realize that the disappearance of awakened souls isn't the end. It's the beginning of something much greater.